Hey folks, so we have our next project out here and it is a lovely sunny day, if you could tell. This is exactly what my sun-starved skin has been looking for. And you'll notice that from our last video, we have some of the planters that I am reusing in this episode. This is how plant math works. You take out 3 plants, you put them in another planter, and now you have 3 more plants to plant up. So that is plant math. So today we're going to be working on mainly agave. We have some other kind of cool plants as well, but it really started with this agave quichou con. So I got that with the number of my euphorbias, and you can see that it has the same issue that I had with my euphorbia. It is just pupping out from all different directions, and I can't water this any longer, so I need to get this a bigger planter pot. But also it brings up a conversation about some of the other agaves that I have here. You can see that quichou con is a more variegated version. This one is an agave americana, and I would say that this is variegata, but it has a different cultivar name. Let me see. Cornelia Starlight. So you can see that has those yellow edging around there. But a number of these plants, with the exceptions, these are not hardy, but for any of you who want to bring your plants outdoors, or you are in a, if you know what it means by having a certain grow zone, we're in a grow zone 5-6. If you actually wanted to plant some of these out in your landscape, you could actually do that. Not with all of them. These are not hardy to that zone. I think that these are more around like grow zone 8-9. But a number of these are cold hardy. Now I usually bring them outside during the spring, summer, fall months. So I've now just started bringing this agave outside and I bring it in for the winter. But if I wanted to plant it in the landscape in very well draining gravelly mixtures, I could actually do that. You risk in areas where you get a lot of snow and a lot of wetness, a lot of rain, that they'll rot out. So I have them in planters and I just take them out. But believe it or not, I was at the Connecticut Cactus and Succulent annual show, and I met a gentleman there. His name is Chris, and he actually takes out a number of plants, not even cold hardy ones. He's in Connecticut, and he takes out a number of his plants, plants them in his landscape, in garden beds, and then removes thousands of succulents and cacti and basically stores them in his basement during the winter months. I would say that's a little bit too much effort for me, but maybe some folks would say, well, you know, just planting all these and having to bring them in from indoors into outdoors and outdoors into indoors and back and forth, it's already too much. But anyway, so let's start with this. You can see that this was incredibly dry. Gives us a really good chance to see the roots, but you could also see it just had no room whatsoever to get watered, and has all these beautiful little offsets off to the side. Now, not all agave will pup out. Most of the times agave will stick out a flower stalk. It's in the Asparagaceae family, so if you know what an asparagus is or have ever eaten an asparagus, it's very similar. Seeing an agave flower, especially like agave americana flowers that are, you know, 8, 9, 10 feet tall, it looks just like a big asparagus spear. And I think I made a comment on one of the videos that I did with Huntington Botanic Gardens, and I was like, I wonder if you could actually eat an agave flower like as an asparagus spear, because you could feed a whole family. And somebody told me that it is edible, so I wouldn't test that. But it is something that I had one of our esteemed commenters had mentioned. Now this is very dry, so I let this get too dry. You can see there's some really nice roots in here, but then really dry roots. And this is kind of a bad look, because you want to clip any of these dried bits out and have it produce some new roots. And again, this is partially my fault because over the winter months, I didn't do any watering of this plant, and it just got to this situation where it needed to get some new digs. And I have some really beautiful pots right here. Again, this is kind of a more fluted top. And what I like about fluted tops is that you could water around the edges, and then the plant roots new plant roots will start to grow out towards the edges. So I think this is going to be a lot more space. Now I'm starting to use a grittier mix because I like to keep these outdoors, as I'd mentioned, in the spring, summer, and fall months, and we get variable rainfall. And you know, you don't have to copy this, but I make recommendations based on what works for me in my area. You know, if you're somebody who overwaters or you're somebody who wants to put it out during the rainy season, then I would say add a little bit more grit. Here I have about a third, a third, a third. I'm using the Espoma Cactus mix, which already has a bunch of perlite in. I added a bunch of Bonsai Mix as well, which is kind of this calcined clay and shale. It's kind of puffed, so it's really lightweight. And then I also have the perlite here. And I just pre-mixed some already. Didn't have my mixing bowl the last time, but you could see what this looks like. Now, if you're somebody in, say, the Arizona desert, where some of these plants are from, or Texas, and you have dry summer months, then you might want to have something that holds a little bit more moisture. If you're somebody indoors and you have a tendency not to water at all, maybe you want to create and amend your mix for that. Now here's an example of a little offset. This is just starting. So I could separate this, but I'm going to probably keep it in this mix. There's a great video that we did at Plant Delights Nursery, which actually does a lot of great agave, by the way. They have a technique where they are able to reproduce the same cultivar, and it involves a power drill. So I'm not going to say any more to that. You might have seen the episode, and if you didn't, I will link to that. But it was absolutely fascinating. Setting this in here. I have some interesting toppers for this. I have both this kind of lava stone, and then I have this really cool sand. You know, it's probably the type that you use like in a fish aquarium. So I might add that to the top of these. Oh, you gotta be careful because these have long spines. I will fertilize this. It is that time of year for fertilizing. A good opportunity to do it. So now I'm going to get water right around the roots because this was a situation where, and I would have soaked this. This would have been a good idea, a good candidate for soaking. You know, just 15, 20 minutes, letting the roots rehydrate. Looks really nice. Now, one of the things that I wanted to show you, so this one's already repotted, but this is one of my cold hardy succulent. This is Agave havardiana, and there's some dry bits I'm going to cut off. And what's unusual again is this is also pupping out. So you see right here, you got a couple pups, which is, I think, unusual for this species. I would love for folks who grow this, you know, in their yard or grow more of these rather than just in pots, whether this is something that is normal, because typically I thought this was a species that would put out a flower first, then this rosette would die back, and then it would pup out. So it's interesting to see maybe what the conditions were, if it is unusual, what the conditions were that I put it in that allowed it to pup without flowering. And, you know, basically the conditions is that I brought it in during the winter months and I kept it at around 60 degrees. So, you know, and probably lower light. So that's interesting enough. I'm going to fertilize this one. So yes, if you're looking for a cold hardy succulent, cold hardy agave, Agave havardiana is a good choice. Now, some of those other hardy agaves is another one that looks very similar to this one. They almost look the same. This one is Agave perreri, and these are both hardy to zone 5. They're typical to higher elevation areas in the Southwest United States, so like Arizona area. Very similar. And now what makes this hardy and this not? Because by eye you can't tell whether this one would be hardier than this one or vice versa. Morphologically, what gives them the ability to be more hardy is that they have this leaf imbrication, so sometimes this overlapping leaf. The rosettes are very close to the ground, so that's another way to regulate the temperature. The other thermal regulation that they may have is in the color of the leaves. So this blue-green, it doesn't allow for like fluctuations in temperatures. Oh, and it has this waxy cuticle. So that's another good indication. The waxy cuticle helps to reduce any type of water loss. Other things that they go through is that they start to pump out a lot more solutes and prolines, sugars, osmolytes, things like that within the leaf. And it basically lowers the freezing temperature. So it's almost like a plant antifreeze, which is super cool. They start to desiccate a bit. So oftentimes they're these fleshy leaves, super fleshy during the spring, summer, and fall months, but during the winter months, as it's starting to cool, they may desiccate a little bit just because they want to reduce the amount of water in their leaves so that there's less freezing on the inside, because that's basically what happens to plants that aren't hardy or haven't evolved to be in cold climates, is that once they have a lot of water in their leaves, it could freeze and it could bust the cells. Because what happens to water as it freezes, it expands. And that would be a death sentence for a number of plants. So there's a lot of things that these plants do that has helped them evolve to colder climates. So this was shipped bare root, so you could see what the fleshy roots look like. I like when plants have bare roots because then you could actually tell whether they have any pests on them. Sometimes you get like a root mealy, especially with succulent plants. This is another cold hardy one. This is called Agave utahensis, and this one could be very damaging. Instead of like these little red and black tips, this one has more white tips, and you can see that it has a bit more vertical rosette. This is also hardy to zone 5. So I think this looks so brilliant. Basically this kind of limestone color with that blue-green color. All right, I'm gonna just press the soil in here just to make sure that there's no air pockets. Also keeps it a bit more upright. That's a challenge sometimes with bare roots. Sometimes you might wanna wet the potting medium that you're using a little in advance because it's easier to kind of set these upright, but this looks like it's having no problem whatsoever. And I will be bringing these outdoors. Basically, once it stops freezing, even though this can deal with being frozen, challenge is I have them in pots. And when you have them in pots, they get colder than if they were in the ground. You just want to be wary about that. This one is an interesting one. This is called Agave praying hands, and you can see that all the leaves are coming up as if it's clasping. Beautiful rosette form, and it has a red along the edges, really dark, kind of succulent green, evergreen leaf. And this is a cross between an agave and a manfreda. It's an intergeneric cross, it would be considered. Now this is one of the ones that I'm going to be planting up that I had used before. Now I think when it's an intergeneric cross, it's basically a sterile cross. There might be some exceptions to that rule, but that's, to my knowledge, most intergeneric crosses are sterile. And sometimes when they're not, you begin to realize that, well, maybe the plant should be in the same genus as the other. Gaster aloe is another one, so that's usually with Gasteria and aloe combined. That would be another intergeneric cross that is common in at least in the succulent world. Try to spread the roots out, these nice beautiful tuberous roots. If you could get them all around the pot, that would be ideal. Hollowed this out because this one comes with a lot of soil. And I just got this at one of the big box shops. You'd be surprised, sometimes you get some really good deals. Now this is a little dry, which is okay. I'm gonna try to break some of this out. All right, one of the last ones that I have is this one, which they'll commonly call it a yucca. But this is actually not a yucca. It looks like it has a kind of yucca-like flower. It's a hesperaloe. And this one is also, surprisingly, because it looks dainty, it's hardy to zone 6. So not as cold hardy as zone 5, but it's up there. And it gets a really beautiful, I would say buttery yellow spike. And you have some red flowering varieties as well. You could also use the bonsai mixture as a topper, which I did with a lot of the euphorbia. But because these have a nice bluish tone to their leaf, I wanted to use some more different toppers. And this one, I love the look of the sand with this. Now, I will have to figure out a different place to kind of put this one in particular. Like I said, I bring them in during the winter months. I put them in my bird coop, but I'm so concerned about putting something like this in the bird coop because I feel like the diamond doves will be skewered on here. I'll have like a little peepo or tutu skewer. Oh my goodness sakes. I mean, they are desert birds, so they probably are used to things like that, although Australian desert, not necessarily North American desert. So here's one of those little pups. I'm gonna put this right back in there. And then I'll probably end up getting more water to water all these in. But this is just another project under my belt now. And since it's warm enough, spring is finally here. I could get all of these plants outdoors and growing big and beautiful, because that's what I love to do. I could get them outdoors, they look so big and beautiful, and then I have to pull them in to a sad, darker apartment afterwards. But for those of you who don't have an outdoor space, of course, giving them really nice southern facing, if you're in the northern hemisphere, strong light near your windowsill, or you could even get some of LEDs. An overhead light would make the rosette grow a bit more normally. And of course, you could switch around your plant in the summer months around that windowsill so that you get light evenly on all sides. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
If you're craving to see plants in the wild and explore botanical gardens with friends in real life, then check out our small group botanical tours that we're doing throughout the world. In 2025, we'll be heading to Costa Rica, and we recently announced our Thailand trip in early 2026 with more trips along the way. Now, if the trips are sold out, just join the wait list or fill in the survey to let us know where you'd like to go next. Just head over to homesteadbrooklyn.com, click on the Learn tab, and then you'll find botanical tours for more information. And while you're there, check out our suite of online houseplant courses, from Houseplant Basics to the Houseplant Masterclass. You could find it all at homesteadbrooklyn.com. See you in the next video.